it really solidified this impression of like that I was on a scavenger hunt in a way over the years for my mom's self and identity and perspective, that her preparations for us were not just inside the box, right? She had spent so much time thinking about what we might need and how she could help us navigate the world.
Welcome to our latest Book Reporter Talks to interview, where our guest today is Genevieve Kingston, and we are going to be talking about her memoir, Did I Ever Tell You?, which is a beautifully written book. That's one of my Bets On selections. This book, I folded down so many pages. I thought so much about this book. I'm thinking of people I'd like to give this book to. It's that special. Our book reporter reviewer, Nora Peel, had this to say: Did I Ever Tell You offers solace and an empathetic voice for readers who have contended with their own experiences of grief and loss. It's a powerful testament to a mother's legacy and the importance of living a full and meaningful life, however long that may last. I was so moved by this book, and I've been really looking forward to this conversation. So welcome, Gwen. So nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you wrote a modern love column. I went back and tracked and found this. The New York Times in May in 2021 that was entitled, She Put Her Unspent Love in a Cardboard Box. At that time, were you thinking about writing a book, or were you just, let me try this column and get my thoughts out?
It actually was. I was feeling around in the dark, trying to figure out my way into this story that has been sort of bubbling up in me, kind of my whole life. And I felt that there might be a book in there. I was trying to sort of figure out my way in, and almost as an exercise for myself in that process, I wrote out, okay, what is the spine of this story, beginning, middle, and end, the major dramatic question, why am I feeling compelled to write this right now? And what emerged was this essay. I realized that the core of this story is my mom, who passed away when I was 11. She got sick when I was 3. And during that time, she put together this box of gifts and letters for every one of my birthdays until I turned 30, and for getting my driver's license and graduating high school and getting engaged and getting married and having a child. And I realized that in all of her letters, she had really set down one side of a conversation that she and I have been having for the last over 20 years since she passed away. And that what I really wanted to do was to write down my side of the conversation and to say, here's what happened since you've been gone, and here's how these letters helped me find my way through the difficult moments of my life. And I was feeling compelled to do it right then because I just turned 31 and I'd opened all the birthday gifts, and what was left was engagement, marriage, baby. And I was reflecting on what I wanted for the next part of my life.
It's like, okay, I'm at 30. Mom, you don't have a 40 or 50 there? 40, 50, 60? Like, like, could there be something for later on? But no. Okay.
I know. And I think it's an age when a lot of folks are asking those questions. They're thinking about, what they want for their future. So that was the inspiration for the column. And then it was so helpful to have that kind of that spine, that outline of like, right, here's the major thrust of the story. And then just the pleasure of getting to flesh that out over so much white space, all those pages, to spread out and delve deeper into her story.
Into her story, what she done. And it was like your mom was very intense at first, researching all the treatments she could possibly have. And this is going back, 20 years. This is going back a long time, or 28 years at this point, 20, something like that. So things were very different as far as what treatments could be, afforded and things like that to people. So after she does that, she realizes, okay, this is going to have a definite end. And she moves the same kind of energy to creating this for you and your brother, these gifts for you and your brother. And I just love that, because it's like, my time's going to be limited, but by the same token, what am I going to give? And I just think it must have been amazing to be watching her, like sitting with her ribbon and her tissue paper and putting all these things together.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, I think even in the column, I said, she was always looking for a way to survive, because she wanted to be there for us, and she wanted to be our ally as we grew up. And when she began to realize that she wasn't going to be able to physically survive past this illness, she started looking for how she could find a way to be there with us, even though her life was going to be cut short. And at the time, as a child, I don't think I was really capable of understanding kind of the scope of what she was undertaking or how much it would come to mean to me as
Mhm.
I grew up and got older. Because yeah, the fact that we're still having this conversation, she's still such a presence in my life. She's still this person offering me these pieces of advice after all of these years apart. It's miraculous.
Yeah, it really, really is. And the way she wrote the notes that we see of what she said, and it was for that age. She was writing to you of what you would have heard at that age and been able to understand. And just remember, this is going to be this or that, but I'm here. Like you just felt like she's sitting right here the whole time.
Yeah, one of my favorite examples was when I got my first period and I did not want to talk to my dad about this. And so I went into the box, I opened it up, and there was this 4-page letter that was about boys and romance and societal expectations and your changing body and what it is to belong to a community of women,
Mhm.
and hold on to yourself and don't try to change yourself to meet the expectations of a partner. And then also a package of maxi pads because she was that prepared.
Here, just in case you can't get to the store today.
Exactly, like for right now.
For right now, for right this minute, da da da. I just love that. And I also pictured like what was it like for you because you knew what she was doing. You knew she was over on the dining room table doing this. Were you ever trying to peek or like give a look ahead or
The
no?
opposite, in a way. I was actually kind of, it made me nervous. I didn't want to accept that she wasn't going to survive, right? Because I was the child. I wasn't able to get there yet. And the fact that she had the foresight and the emotional capacity to accept and prepare, I'm hugely grateful for it
Mhm.
now. But I couldn't quite conceive of it at the time. People often ask me whether I ever peeked at something in the chest, like what, the actual box. And I always say, they say, oh, he must be so patient. He must have so much self control. And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm a very impatient person, but I'm a person who's read a lot of fairy tales.
Right.
And I know what happens when you don't follow the instructions, right? Terrible things happen. And this box, it was so clearly the closest thing to magic that I had ever encountered. I thought, you don't mess with that.
Yeah, we're not going to mess with Narnia. Nope, no playing around with the game. No,
Nope.
no playing around with the game. I love seeing the boxes. I really was trying to figure out what it looked like on your website. You had the box that you
Mhm.
open, and I just
Mhm.
love that. But I also love reading that you took this all around the country, wherever you've moved and wherever you've gone. It's the box comes with you. You go to college, the box is part of like going any place you went. And I found that it was like your version of a security blanket in a lot of ways was my box. Which was
Yeah, it was a very comforting thing, but it was also a matter sort of necessity because I won't sort of go into things that happen
Mhm,
late in the book, but
mhm.
I lost my connection to my childhood home when I was quite young, when I was in my early 20s, and so I really didn't have a home base in the way that a lot of 20 somethings do, and so I had to go, okay, what are the most important things? What is my little life, that I will cart around with me from one dorm room or
Mhm.
apartment to the next? And the most important thing was always this cardboard box because it was the rest of the conversation that I was having with my mom and it wasn't finished. And I share in the book a story about I was in graduate school and someone broke into my house.
Mhm.
And I came home and saw that someone had been in there and that I'd been, they'd taken my laptop and X, Y, and Z. And my first thought was, oh my God, what if it's all gone? What if they've taken
Oh,
all
oh,
of these things that I
oh,
haven't even looked at yet because I've been so good and patient and waited. And I couldn't believe, and it was literally just in the middle of my bedroom floor at that point. I think I had it like at the foot of my bed. And I lifted the lid and everything was there. They hadn't touched a single thing. And I just felt like I'd been given the gift all over again. And from at that
wow.
point, after that, I always put it in the back of a closet. I would always hide it away somewhere.
It's tucked away
But
with a blanket over it and a bunch of
yeah,
dirty
exactly.
clothes.
Just like, yeah, it's hidden. It's a treasure chest.
Yes, it is. It is. And was there one present that was more memorable besides, get your period from than the rest for you? Was there one that you opened and you were like, "Ah, this is like so cool that she did this, or was it each of them that you felt that way about?
Um, Certainly some stand out. The one that's popping into my mind, even though it was complicated, was she'd given me this beautiful strand of pearls for my high school graduation.
That one. I was gonna guess
And
that.
this
I was gonna
beautiful,
guess it.
really, this beautiful gift, beautiful. And it was so complicated because I didn't want to graduate high school. I didn't want to leave home. In many ways, this is the story of my lifelong uh, homesickness. for my mom, for a reality where my mom wasn't sick and wasn't going to die, for the places that she had infused with safety. We grew up in the same city, and we went to all the same schools, and those places felt safe and they felt connected to her. And I was really grieving when I had to graduate high school and my friends were leaving and we all had to move on from this part of our lives. And so this necklace, this symbol of like adulthood, maturity, being ready for the next chapter, I sort of didn't know how to hold it. My mom, couldn't leave home fast enough when she was my age, right? She didn't even bother to graduate high school. She like dropped out before her senior year and found some archaeological dig in Europe to go attach herself to. Like, she was this incredibly adventurous, confident woman. And I was holding that string of pearls in my hands in that morning going, please, please, please let me find some piece of your strength, your independence, as I try to figure out what in the world to do from here on out.
And it's also pearls. I remember my mom gave me pearls. They're like such a big deal. And you're like, am I that grown up? Am I that grown up that I should be wearing pearls right now? Wait, is this a big thing? Like, what do I get rid of? Like, oh, am I right?
Absolutely. They feel so sophisticated, so womanly. And you're like, am I ready for these? Can I wear these? I also share in the book this little bit of trivia, which is that pearls, they last longest if they're worn because they absorb the oils from your skin. And so those pearls had a little bit of my mom in them, and now they have a little bit of me in them. And it is this thing you pass on. That is so intimate, the way it touches your skin and like takes in a bit of you.
Yeah, my husband had his mom buy me pearls when she went to China years ago, and I still have those pearls. And when my mom passed away a couple of years ago, she had a couple of strands, like 4 strands together. And those were the things I wanted the most. It was like, oh, that's like really cool. And it's different. It's different from the pearls that I had, but it's ones that she sort of broke out and did something different with pearls. And I thought that was cool,
Yeah, there's something intimate about pearls. I don't know. I think so. There's something special.
And grown up in a lot of ways too. You're supposed to be very grown up then. So there's still 2 unopened ones, wedding and first baby, still on. You're very good. You're very, very good.
Yes, I've been very good. I did peak just once. I did break the rules once. It's at the very end of the book. And I think it was for a very good reason.
Yes, very, very good reason. Very, very good reason. The other really lovely thing was you shared a birthday with your mom. So every year on your birthday, you're doing the math of mom would have been this, mom would have been that. And at some point, you're not going to catch up to her, but it's like, wait, I'm like the age mom was like when she passed away. But I think it was really special that you shared it. So did you have, this is my mom question, different cake and candles, share a cake and candles? What did you guys do? Do you remember?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. I think we did. I think we shared a cake and candles. Yeah. And then it took me, I think we would do like a little family thing that was sort of for both of us. And then usually I would have a birthday party with my friends that would be separate. And I talk a fair amount in the book about the insanely elaborate birthday parties that my parents would arrange for my brother and me that made, my brother became a parent quite young and started doing kids' birthday parties. And he was like, I feel so inadequate. Like, I can barely get it together to take everyone to the movies. Like, what were our parents doing? Like, from where did they find the energy? But realizing that it's because every year it was like, well, maybe this is the last one,
right.
Maybe this is and so that duality of our childhood, these extraordinary gifts of experience and energy and whimsy that our parents gifted us with. But there is a darkness hovering behind that too, right? There is a fear of like, how can we give them enough of a childhood to compensate for it maybe ending early?
Right. And now parents are just like crazy. They just do this like all the time.
I know,
yeah. For my son, for one of them, he liked trains. So we built like the Thomas the Train engine. Like we built, and we had a coal car and we had this. And I keep saying to parents in the neighborhood, I have all these pans in the attic. Like, I'm not making Thomas again. So if you need a pan, I got it. I got dinosaurs. Because the biggest thing is like when you have really little kids is you have the family party, the school party they have to send the cupcakes to, and then the friend party. And I used to say that I was never as exhausted as the night after of when the friend party was over. It was like completely exhausting to throw a party like that for kids. Because you're just, what are they doing? How much energy?
No, absolutely. And then the crash afterwards, right? Of like all of this like expectation and whatever, build up, and then you're yeah, no,
No.
I don't know. I think maybe my brother's got the right ideas. Take the kids and their friends to the movies and call it a day.
Here, everyone get candy and then go home. Like,
Yeah.
don't eat it until we're leaving, and then you can eat your candy and with your parents, you know? So I feel like we know a lot about your mom from the gift she gave her, and you said she's an adventurer. Tell us a little bit more about her, because she sounds like she really, really had a lot of spunk and a lot of energy, and she poured a lot into the years that she had.
She did, and I part of the book is me kind of going on a bit of a journey to try to understand more the scope of her life. And she'd led sort of a bigger life than I had realized. She was the daughter of an artist and a politician who split when she was a kid. So she lived her life between those worlds of this sort of bohemian kind of existence and this, this world of Washington D.C. politics and important people. And she kind of rebelled against all of it in a way. And as I said, took off when she was 17 to follow a boyfriend to Europe to go, on this marine archaeological expedition. And then she wound up at UC Santa Cruz. And when she was still in college, she founded a nonprofit called Gray Bears that provides food to senior citizens living in poverty. It's still going on.
Wow.
And and so she was always interested in finding solvable problems. She was interested in systems. She was interested in service. From there, she decided in a strange turn of events to go to business school and get her MBA and become an entrepreneur. And she met my dad and they started a company together. And she was always interested in nutrition. She also was part of this thing in Sonoma County Blue Ribbon Commission on Child Hunger. She was always interested in that. And so they started a company together and they really ended up building their lives around family. They thought, we want to own a small business, we want to be our own bosses, and we want to be really, really involved in our kids' lives.
Wow.
That was where they ended up finding the most meaning, which I think maybe surprised my mom, that being a mom ended up feeling like the greatest adventure of her life.
Yeah. And there's so many people that it's so concerned about career, it's getting ahead, all these kinds of things. And like I have said something about the other day, I said, okay, who's going to be paying Social Security when we need Social Security? Because everybody's now having one child or no children. Okay. Who's going to be, because we were from big families. There was a family of 8 in the neighborhood. There was a family of 9. We were 2. You were 2. But that was like unusual. Like a lot of people still had a lot of kids, a lot of, this, that, the other thing. And it's become like people are really thinking more before they want to have a child. It's also much more expensive to have a child now, much more expensive. Everything from prenatal, labor, delivery, everything has gone exponentially up. Somebody to watch your child is like, I think I should just go become a nanny. I mean, it's like crazy, like what's going on these days. And I think it's just being there and being there for your kids is something that actually feels like a novelty right now, because everybody feels like if you're going to have kids, you've got to be out there making so much more money to be able to keep your lifestyle.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, my mom was one of, 8, all told. And so, yes, absolutely. And I think that she approached parenting with huge, intentionality, obviously, which I admire. A lot of the emphasis for me writing this book was, again, finding myself at that moment when you are kind of asking yourself these questions about what you want your life to look like, what's important to you, do you want children, how will that work with your other goals and ambitions, and and maybe that's a time when you really want to talk to your parents about that, or maybe that's a time when you really don't want to talk to your parents and they're on the phone to you all the time being like, what's going on? But either way, I think you're looking to the example you were set. And I was looking to her example, and that was my impulse to go back over all of these letters, all of these gifts, everything she taught me about the kind of woman she was, the kind of woman I wanted to become. And it was this extraordinary journey of getting, I got on the phone to all of her friends and all of her siblings and said, tell me your stories, or tell them to me again. And that's where sort of the title of the book comes from. Did I ever tell you? This is how I've been collecting stories and information about my mom, for 20 something years, is that a friend will say, oh, did I ever tell you about the time? And I say, oh, tell me. And then I have a new memory to add to my sort of
collage of who mom is. She also gave you this amazing gift of, she had you guys in therapy when you were going through this, which was first a huge gift that you had somebody that you could talk about your fears and everything that was going on. That was one thing. And she encouraged you to stay with that, and your dad encouraged you to stay with that as time went on. But then you asked some questions, and the therapist said, well, when you're ready, she said that she could go see her therapist and learn more. I mean, you talk about a door being swung open at a time. So talk to us about that, because I just thought that was mind blowing of this is what you can have.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to be able to, I went to therapy for sort of the same therapist for like 16 years. Again, there's a certain amount of financial privilege involved in that I want to acknowledge. But yes, I was 19 years old. I was feeling really lost. I had sort of was very confused about college, how to move forward, sort of right after the pearl necklace. And yeah, I got in contact with my mom's old therapist and said, I know confidentiality is a thing, but is there anything you could tell me? And she said, oh yeah, your mom said before she died, she said, if you ever came asking, I should tell you anything that you wanted to know, which kind of knocked the wind out of me. I couldn't believe, as always, my mom was 10 steps ahead of me, right? She had seen it coming, that I would have these questions, that I would want to know her in all, as much as I could. And so she had given me this gift of saying, yeah, you can have it all, the dark stuff, the complicated stuff, the rough edges, right? She didn't try to remain this kind of perfect angelic mother figure, right? She said, no, like, I want you to know all of me if that's what you want. And I had, that conversation was challenging in a lot of ways. I talk in the book about learning things that were, maybe hard or a little destabilizing, but I was so grateful. And it really solidified this impression of like that I was on a scavenger hunt in a way over the years for my mom's self and identity and perspective, that her preparations for us were not just inside the box, right? She had spent so much time thinking about what we might need and how she could help us navigate the world. And I think I'm still finding them. I keep thinking there's still people out there waiting for their phones to ring. Maybe they'll read the book and they'll go, okay, I think it's time. The time has come.
I've got the story for you. Have I got a story for you? Now, let me tell you about the night we went out. And I think it was really great because it's like you're unwrapping this other part of her life. You're unwrapping her friendships, seeing them through her through their eyes and what they're saying. And also the things she was telling a therapist that was things that troubled her, things that made her happy, things that made her sad, things that she was worried about. And to be able to have somebody objective telling you things that you're about your mom at a certain point in your life is huge, because you also don't want to glorify her in just this way. You want her to be a person. And that's what I felt like during the book, is you wanted her to be a person, not just some statue someplace that you were going praise to.
Exactly. I think that there's a moment that comes, in every child's life when your parent becomes a person, and that can be really sort of disturbing and also wonderful, but we were never going to get that. I was too little. We were never going to get to have that relationship. And I really wanted it because I had a sense that I mean, I'm sure we would have had our scuffles when I was a teenager, certain of it, but I also believe that we would have had a friendship that, and so this is sort of one way of getting to do that. And yeah, absolutely. I wanted the opportunity to know her as a woman, just as my mom.
It's interesting. My mom passed away when she was 93, and you've lived a good life at that point. But a lot of people in 93, there are not a lot of people show up at their wake or at their funeral because their friends were all older. And the people at my mom's wake, it was like, as we say in Italian, it was a full room. It was a full room of people. And as we were sitting there and we're talking to people, they were telling things about my mom that she had done with the book club, and people had come up and told me presents that she'd done for them and given to them. And if you don't have that moment as an adult to hear it, it's nice that you're able to hear from her friends now of like, this is what happened, because it's a huge part of what her life was that I didn't completely know about my mom. I knew she went to book group. I didn't know she was like, she knew that many people and what they thought about her talking about the book. I didn't know it.
Absolutely. No, and one of the, another spectacular gift my mom gave me was the gift of her friends. So she had an extraordinary circle of female friends. And they really took me in after she died. They kind of let me, take her spot. And in one way that was, we got to help keep her alive for each other through our memories. But they also mothered me in these very like direct, specific ways. These women have lent me money. They've helped me move. They've listened to my romantic problems. I mean, absolutely extraordinary, the way that they stepped in and showed up for me. And I'm not really in the business of giving advice, but if I had any advice for someone who is looking at a family or in a family where there is a looming loss of a parent, or even honestly, if there isn't, bringing trusted adults into your child's life, that who have an investment in them, and who love you, who love your parent, love their parents, but love the children. Someone that they can go to when they're having a fight with you, or when they have questions that somehow they don't know how to come to you with. Having those other people, I just think it's one of the greatest gifts a parent can give.
I know that sometimes when my kids get together with a friend of ours, like there's a good friend who lives in Colorado, and they get together and he tells me then how he sees my kids. And I think it's like great because I know, and he's taking them to lunch or sharing like a joy in what they do. And it's such a gift that we can all give to our friends, like children and stuff like that. But you really portray how these women showed up for you as you're just sitting there going, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to figure this out. How can you help me navigate it?
Absolutely. And there's sometimes there's a gift in someone not being a parent, and that they don't have an investment in like how what's going on in your life reflects on me, or like,
Right,
do you know what I mean?
true, very
There's
true.
just sort of a disinterested love in some way of like, all I want is for you to be okay, but I'm perfectly happy to like sit here and help you figure it out over whatever kind of time that takes. I'm not terrified that you're not, fulfilling your potential or whatever.
You
Because I
haven't
went on
cleaned your
some journeys. There was some tough stuff.
and you haven't
Um,
cleaned your room or the dishes are all upstairs. You don't ever
right.
dealing with any of those things. You're just dealing with the
Otherwise,
basics.
yeah.
Let's cut it. Let's cut it. There are so many very emotional moments in your family that you had to go revisit to tell the complete story. What was it like revisiting those, knowing now, like on the other side, like how you've come through it? But you had to go through it at that point with those eyes in a lot of ways, instead of like, oh, I've taken time to sit there and think about it and reflect back.
Yeah, no, it was actually very healing, because I could kind of have some compassion for my child self, because at the time I just felt like such a loser. Like I couldn't go to a slumber party because I without crying and wanting to come home, because I was so afraid of losing connection with my mom even for a moment, because our bond felt so fragile and her life was fragile. And looking back on it now, it's like, well, that makes sense. That's okay, like, you're doing okay, kid. But at the time, it just felt like, oh, I just want to be like everybody else. Why is this so hard? So it felt actually quite healing to revisit those things.
And there was one present that broke, and we won't talk about, like, but you were young when that happened, and it scattered. And I thought that moment of you're feeling like your mom scattered at that moment too. And I've got to pick all the pieces up and I've got to put it back together. And I think it was like one of the second or third presents that you'd gotten. And well, wait a second, wait, does it not be a present then? Like, wait, what do I have from it then if it's not this thing? And
Yeah,
inside now you realize the thing is in here, but there it was material thing.
absolutely. Yeah, that this feeling of I've not been like a worthy recipient of this gift or of this legacy, right? Which I think is something, I mean, obviously we're in big metaphor territory here, but I think that a lot of folks have those moments in terms of like, how do I handle the legacy of my parents or my grandparents or my ancestors? Like, what is passed down? How
Mhm.
do I honor it and hold it and use it well? And also, I need to forge my own path and be my own person, and holding those things together. But yeah, in that moment of breaking this precious
Mhm.
object, it just felt like I had betrayed the trust, that was put in me. And I just beat myself up about it for like years. And then years later, I found another letter from her that's in the book, that where she says specifically, these are just things, and some of them are going to get lost, and some of them are going to get broken, and it is not the same as losing your connection to me. And
Mhm.
but even that she knew that what she was doing was just a metaphor.
Yeah.
She said that the inspiration for making the box was the story of Vasilissa. It's a fairy tale about a little girl whose dying mother gives her a magic doll that she can talk to when she's in need of advice and she doesn't know what to do. And that this box, mine and my brother's, was her way of trying to give each of us a magic doll, a package that we could carry around and go to for advice when we felt lost or we didn't know what to do or what the right decision was to make. And that she was trying to help us develop our own intuition to
Ooh.
navigate the world. Yeah, she said
Ooh.
what the doll represents in the story is the girl's own intuition. And so trying to help you develop that inner sense of what's right for you.
So your brother in his box,
Yeah.
was he as patient with his box? Did his box travel everywhere with him too?
And now, so he was patient, but so he was a boy, and he
Mhm.
was 4 years older, and he was right when our mom eventually did die. He was right at that moment, I think, when you're really trying to individuate
Mhm.
as a teenager. He was about to go to college, and I don't think that he needed it in the same way that I did in those early years to
Yeah.
feel connected to her. He also got more of her, more time with her.
Mhm. Mhm.
So he left it at home and he'd come, go to college and come back and open things on the summers. But he ended up starting a family really young. He had twins when he was 22. And I think that was the time when the box felt like something to go to. When he was hitting those milestones,
Right.
engagement, marriage, child, I think that was a moment when he was grateful to have somewhere to go to feel connected to
Yeah.
her.
It's like, wait a second, mom, I'm 22. I'm having babies. Wait, I'm having two of them at the same time.
That was the
Any,
moment when, yeah.
I think, I think 22 and two at the same time would be like a huge, like, yeah, where's the box? Where's the box now? And can I crawl in it for a while too? You know?
100%. They're doing great, by the way. The kids are 10 out of 10.
Yeah, everything's good. Everything's good. You're also a playwright, and things that are told in scenes in a play. And it's a big leap from playwriting to memoir writing. Did you take classes in writing? Or was it just from the heart?
I did, absolutely. When I was first feeling around for this story, I did take a string of classes in memoir writing, which is wonderful because you learn from the teacher, but also from your fellow students who are all trying to figure out how to frame their stories. Very instructive. Um, and I also just read all of the memoirs that I just begged everyone I knew to recommend their favorite memoirs to me. And I spent sort of 3 years just like in just memoir after memoir after memoir, trying to really understand the genre, where it's at right now, like where the landscape of memoir, of contemporary memoir right now, how my book might live in that space. But yeah, to an extent, storytelling is storytelling, and scene is scene, and dialogue is dialogue. But the great gift, of course, of prose is all the space to give your characters, or in this case, mostly my character, interiority. Whereas in a play, you're relying so heavily on subtext,
Right.
right? It's so much about what's not said, because people don't speak their hearts out loud at each other all of the time. So you're
Yeah.
always kind of trying to figure out how to create the shape of a story kind of in the negative space. And so to be able to go in there and kind of have this direct um, point of communication with your reader that is so intimate and so personal, yeah, it was really, really a gift. It was a really exciting form to be creating in.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite memoir that can you think about that really steered you as you were going?
I have so many now, but the two that I always recommend to someone who is like who's like, I haven't really read a lot of memoir, like I'm interested. I always recommend the pairing of Autobiography of a Face by Lucy
Oh,
Greeley, read in conversation with Truth and Beauty by Ann Patchett, which I think that they're both stunning books in their own right, but Truth and Beauty um, uh, is about Ann Patchett's friendship of many years with Lucy Greeley, the author of Autobiography of a Face. And so there's this kind of delicious synergy between the two, where you really feel like you know these women and you're in this friendship. And I think that's memoir at its best.
I really love both of those. And when I realized there was a second one, I was like, there was a memoir from a different point of view. This would be really exciting to sit there and see what somebody else was saying. And it's funny because I can't I was thinking like we have bookshelves in every room in this house. And literally they're filled every room in this house. My husband says, I'm not building any more bookshelves, but I was going to wander through the house today and just see which memoirs, there's sometimes I read celebrity ones even, and this sounds really crazy. You learn so much about them. I remember reading Carly Simon's and learning so much about her fear of being on stage, her marriage to James Taylor, all these kinds of things. And you're in those people's heads. The one I haven't read was Barbara Streisand's because it's that big. I figure long road trip at some point, I'll sit there and listen to it. But it's when people are honest about themselves and really, it's not that sugar coated kind of a thing. It's like you're deep in to the things that went right and the things that went wrong. And sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not. But when they're good, boy, you really come away with a totally different feeling about the people.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's a very vulnerable undertaking. I do think that one thing that's interesting, what sort of distinguishes like memoir maybe from, I guess, autobiography or like celebrity autobiography, is that you're trying to focus on like an aspect of a life, right? Instead of sort of all of the autobiographical details. And it's really challenging because you've got to figure out, it's like you have to, like for me, figuring out what makes it into the book. Because mine is over such a span of years, right? Of necessity, it had to span sort of 30 something years. And it's just in this little, in so few pages. So it's like, what goes in? So much has to be left out. You have to be so rigorous about like, does this move the story forward? Does this relate to my central theme of like, this is how my mother continued to parent me after her death? You're sort of trying to chip away, get to like, what is essential in this story? What is it at its core?
Yeah. Like, where is it? And is there extra words? Can all this go?
Gotta go.
Go. I also often think like, where are the outtakes? Like, where were the outtakes? And you sometimes you're sitting and reading like, I don't need this anymore because I already said it over here, but you don't know it until you get it all down. And then it's like, this is just the way. Did you know how you want to shape it when you started? Or did that happen after the writing process of sort of molding it into what you really wanted it to be? Or were you feeling, I think I know how to proceed because I've taken these classes, I've done some writing?
So my playwriting background was very present in that you may notice it's in 3 parts. It's basically a 3-act play. That's what I knew how to write. So that's I was gonna really lean on that. So yes, and I knew that it would be, I felt very clear on what those 3 sections would be, where they would begin and end. And so I wrote part 1, my first draft of part 1 in 3 months, and then my first draft of part 2 in 3 months, and then my first draft of part 3 in 3 months. And but only when that was all written did I go back and begin to then edit each section with my wonderful editor, Mary Cirucci. And so it was kind of like, it was really interesting actually, because for a while I was just editing, one part at a time. And I'd kind of be like, okay, I can hold this all of part 1 in my head and how all of those threads work together. And okay, we don't need this anymore because, like you said, we did that back there. And then there came a time when I was trying to hold the whole book in my head, and it felt like my skull had to get bigger. And that was when we got into like the kind of cliche author situation of like where you're going on long walks and talking to yourself, right? Because it's like you're trying to contain something you can't quite hold, and it's unlike any experience I've ever had before, but it was kind of scary and very exhilarating to try to contain all that.
Yeah. And how many years of your life you're trying to contain in your head as you're walking along and going, well, does that belong here or there? Or where would it be better suited when I'm 12, 15, 18? Where am I bringing this up about my mom? And how did I learn it so that I serve the story authentically as well? So that not only am I opening the box at this point, but I learned this about my mom at this point. I learned this about my family at this point. Where did that all end up happening?
Yeah, and I cared a lot about being as rigorous as I could about accuracy. I know that there's a lot of sort of talk about like, well, memory is subjective and kind of who cares, but I felt I owed it to, there's so many people involved in this story who were in our lives during these challenging times, so many people who showed up for us, our community in these incredible ways. And I felt like I really owed it to them, especially, and to the reader, but to be as rigorous as I could about anything that I could corroborate, I would. Any timeline that I could verify I did, anything I could get another perspective on, I really tried.
Yeah. And it's so when did your agent, editor, who saw it first? When did they see it? Like, you've got these 3 pieces, these 3 parts. You had an agent, and at that point, did you already have an editor, or how's that process happening?
Yeah, so my wonderful agent, Brittany Bloom at the book group, found me through the Modern Love piece. And that connection was pretty instantaneous. I thought, oh, this is the person I want to be spending my creative life with. And then she helped me to sell the book on proposal. So we were fortunate enough to be able to do that, and fortunate enough to have a lot of interest, and we got to have an auction, which is a very exciting thing. And so and it was very clear to me, again, that connection with Mary Sue was really, really strong, where I thought, yeah, this is the person. She asked me such interesting and insightful questions, and I loved the way her brain worked, because it was different than how mine works, and I knew that was going to be good. I knew she would challenge me.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was on from sort of the beginning. I had sort of the first 35 pages and an outline for the rest of it when she came onto the project. So she was instrumental. And so I'd write part one and I'd send it to her, and she'd say, great, keep writing forward. We'll talk about it. Keep writing forward. Part two, I'd send it to her. She'd, great, keep writing forward. And then we worked over months and months to keep refining. And as you said, anything that wasn't essential had to go. I knew I wanted this book to be really distilled.
Yes.
As distilled as I could make it. I only wanted kind of the most potent.
Yeah. It's, I'm going to say spare. It's spare from that point of view. It's absolutely perfect, because it's got what you need, but you really feel like I didn't feel like there was a question unanswered. Like, I didn't think I'd say, oh, did your mother like to drive this way or that way? I mean, there was nothing that I sat there and said, wow, I really feel like I don't really know this woman at all. No, not at all. So has your brother read it? Did your brother read it?
Absolutely. I gave it to him. I didn't want to give it to him too early, because I wanted to be sure that that this was kind of the final version. Because I thought it'd be quite an emotional thing to read over and over again and try to give notes, or it's his life too. So I gave him, but I still wanted it to be early enough that I could make changes, because he was the one person I was like, literally, if anything about this bugs you, we'll toss it. Like, our relationship is so precious to me. I just wanted it to feel good to him. So I sent him the document. It was still a computer document at that time. He read it in 5 hours.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Clear the decks.
Which is secretly, by the way, if you have writer friends, that's secretly what they want whenever they send you. Right? They're like, oh, I sit down, read it immediately.
Do it immediately.
And he said, I cried a lot, but it's beautiful.
Oh.
So proud of you. I said, I do have a few notes. I said, I understand. Like, tell me what you got. And he said, I would like the record to show that I also played piano. That I also was forced to take piano lessons. Not only you suffered. And and you've got me playing the wrong video game at the beginning of the story. I was like, those notes I can handle. Thank you so much. And he was sort of joking, but I think it is astonishing, and I bet other memoirists have found this as well, that the things that people do and don't care about are endlessly surprising.
Yeah.
Like, I think people will take issue with like the way that you constructed their character, and instead they're like, I smoke this brand of cigarettes, like
that wasn't what was going on. I played the bagpipe. Let's get that in. Make sure you got that really well in there, and I was actually better at it than you thought, but that's okay. You can leave it there, Yeah. I remember we had a piano teacher when we were little, and I was playing the piano, pretty well. And then my sister came along, and my sister played better. And she was, Yvonne, well, you were as good as she is. And then her other great line was, Carnegie Hall is not big enough for you. And I was like, I didn't hear that much when my sister started playing the piano, but it's like this moment of thinking about Mrs. Schlosser and what she said to us about the piano.
Oh my God, yeah. And isn't that funny how siblings, you end up really defining yourself in terms of what I think in families, you're always seeking out difference. Like, what makes you different from your siblings? Like, they're better at like, those are the things that shape your sense of yourself, is like how you're different from your siblings.
Yeah. Like, we're 13 months apart. How could we be that different? But we are that different.
People who meet me and my brother now are like, you guys are so similar. And I'm like, no, he's the introvert and I'm the extrovert, and he's good at this and I'm good at this. And like, we define ourselves so early by what we're in contrast to.
Yeah, like, okay, this is what's going on. And people sit there and they go, really? Is that the way you're seeing yourself? Okay, all right, got it. It's very funny. Was this, well, wait, first of all, there's a dedication to Kristina, Peter, and Jamie. It's your dad, your mom, and your brother. And to all of you who helped our family through. And there were so many people that were there for your family. So what's feedback been, because it's been on sale a couple weeks, from family friends? Like, what have people like shared back besides your brother who had to get the right video game and he played the piano? Like, what have other people like said? And do they feel like they're revisiting your mom reading it?
Yeah. No, they've been incredibly supportive of this project. I actually sent copies ahead um, to nearly everyone who's mentioned in the book, because again,
Mhm.
I wanted to be really transparent about what I was doing and wanted people to feel informed and wanted people to feel good about it. And yes, people sort of uniformly said um, that sort of, it's so funny. People said a couple of things. One, they said, wow, I'd forgotten kind of how, or viscerally forgotten how intense those years were that we all lived through
Mhm.
together. And it was
Mhm.
quite intense to revisit them in a good way, but also hard. And then they said, gosh, I really wish that I could have been there for you more
Mhm.
as you were going through this. Like, I have a new understanding of what you went through, and I wish I could have been there for you more. To which I kept being like, I'm sorry. To me, this is a story about everyone showing up for me again and again and again throughout my life and being so held by community. It's why the dedication is what it is. It's like
Mhm.
it really took a village to see us through those 9 years of my
Mhm.
mom's illness.
Mhm.
Um, and so that was so interesting that that was their takeaway is, oh my God, I wish I could have done even more. I thought, what in the world? You know,
What in the
the
world?
capacity for generosity, astounding.
It's more than casseroles. It's more than the casseroles. It's more
Oh my
than all that kind of stuff. It's just being there and having the conversation. So now rights, if I might be wrong on this, have been sold to 14 countries. It may be more. I was looking on your website. And it's clear that the message of the book translates then around the world. Was this something that surprised you? Like 14 countries have picked this up.
Absolutely. I was astonished. I was astonished back when the Modern Love piece came out, and I suddenly my inbox was full of emails from people who, on the face of it, had had very different life experiences or were dealing with different kinds of loss or different kinds of things, and that everyone could find something to
Mhm.
connect to in the story. It was so striking to me. I mean, I was hearing from a man whose wife had just been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and they had small children, and he was trying to figure out how to preserve her memory for them and their relationship. I mean, like all of these different things. And so, yes, the idea that it could also transcend culture in
Mhm.
this way and language was, I was just floored. It has been interesting the different ways that the things get translated, and I'm not, I don't, speak a lot of other languages, but the sensibility that's reflected. I just saw the German cover recently, and I was like trying to Google the title and it like the translation, and it's like the German title translates to oh God, what is it? Oh, if only I could tell you, a memoir of what remains of my mother. And I was like, oh my God, and it's so bleak.
It's like, whoa.
And I was like, okay, Germany, like
Real upbeat. Can't wait to get there and talk
can't
about it.
wait.
You know, just
I know. And I was, because I do think, that people worry this book is going to be too sad. I think that people are
Mhm.
nervous about picking up this book. They think it's going to be sad, and they're not, people don't want to be sad. And all I can say is like that writing this book has been the greatest joy of my life. And
Mhm.
I have to believe and trust that that joy makes it through to the reader
It
because
does. It makes it through the pages because you feel like I knew your mom, but I feel like I knew that you think about as a parent things you can leave to your children on so many different levels. And this was the biggest level of what you could do in so many ways to have been access to her therapist, access to these gifts, access to this. And if people could pick up one little thread of this and put it into their own family lives right now, it's like going like out on an ocean like this. And if you could just put one little wave like this into your family, what would it do? What would come back? You know?
I absolutely agree. And the one thing that I would add is making sure that it's an offering, right? I think that that's what makes the whole project so miraculous is that it was an offer, right? She didn't tell her therapist to come and get involved in my life and, and sort of spring things on me. She didn't insist on any of it. It was an offering that was there for me if and when I needed it. And so
Mhm.
there's no ego in it in that way. There's no insisting. There's no burden. There's just this generous offer.
And it's not call her at 19 and say this, like, no,
right.
she can hear it all. Hear it all. Was this always the title? Was this always the title?
I'm lousy at titles.
Yeah.
So I was untitled for a long time. My miraculous, wonderful agent came up with the title, but it is pulled from a moment in the book where
Yes.
I'm talking to one of my mom's doctors years after her death, and I'm thanking him for many things that he did for her during her life. And he said, he said, "Did I ever tell you?" And then he went into this wonderful story about my mom. And in that moment, just thinking, God, those are my 5 favorite words.
Yeah.
They open a door into the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get some new piece of information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a question. It's a question. It's a question that you're throwing out to somebody. And at the same time, you're giving the answer. You know, you
Yeah.
got some of the answer there too. The cover's terrific. Your mom and you.
Yeah. And it's her handwriting. It's her handwriting as well. I took photos of those words in her handwriting.
Oh, I love it. Oh gosh, it gets even more personal, really even more personal. Cover's terrific. Okay, this is the first cover you saw, or they played around with it, or they?
That was like the first, yeah, that was the first, it was, bam. And I was so kind of rocked by it that I was for a minute, I was like, this is too intimate. Like, can we look at some where we just have a picture of a present on the front or something? This is like a lot. And then I sat with it for a minute. I was like, that's it. There's no other cover. That's it. It's got to be.
The way you're like looking at each other's eyes, the way she's looking down at you, it's the absolute perfect picture for the cover. Did I ever tell you?
And I just found it in a box. I didn't, I just, it's sort of
shocking, right? Shocking that it was in a box. Shocking, right? So you narrated the audio of the book, which you'd have to do because it's a memoir. What was that experience like?
I absolutely loved it. I'm a huge fan of audiobooks. I have been my whole life. That's how my parents put me to sleep every night when they could not possibly read me another story. They would put on an audiobook and that would read me to sleep. So I have such affection for it and such respect for the artistry of great narrators of audiobooks. I really, really enjoyed doing it. The one thing that I found hard, not even emotionally hard, like, oh, I don't want to do this, but like hard to actually get the words out because it was so emotional, was reading the long passages from my mom's letters or the excerpts from video, just because I hear them in her voice. And so to put myself in her shoes and to be thinking about this all from her perspective and what she was trying to do for us, no matter how many times I read them, I'm still so moved and overwhelmed.
Yeah, because it's exactly what she would have said. It's exactly, you're not guessing what she said. It's right there. And we're at a time where and I talk about this a lot on the show, is that we don't write very much. Well, I've handwriting, like they used to always say at school, what kind of doctor is your mother? Because my handwriting is that bad. I mean, I was at a conference yesterday and took notes. If I can read these notes, it'll be a miracle. And my editorial director was with me and he has perfect penmanship, perfect writing. I'll have to take his notes because terrible. But everybody types everything. We email each other. We do this. And what is left? Like later on, will somebody have to go to my old AOL account to find out what I thought about them when they were 5 and 6 and 7? Like, where are those stories? Where is that? And for you to have these handwritten notes was a bigger gift, even because we don't do that anymore. You sign a birthday card, maybe, if you don't send an email or a Facebook or a, Instagram,
No, I know. I talk in the book about how after she died, my mom's handwriting began to feel so precious because it was, limited edition. It was, we know there's not going to be any more. And that's partly why I wanted to use her handwriting on the cover. No, I think that something else that I hope people take from this book is the idea that trust that your wisdom is worth writing down. Your experiences are worth writing down and worth sharing. I think it's easy to think, well, I don't have anything worthwhile to say or pass down to my descendants, or and I just think that one day people are really going to want those imprints of you, those impressions of you, and all the more precious if you pen them.
Yeah, it's like, what did you say? How did you feel? And they don't quite know that unless you actually are sharing. And also there are a lot of people. Your mom was very into sharing the way she felt and what was going on. A lot of people that you don't really know. How did your mother really feel when she was 9? How did she feel when she was 10 and 11? The stories sort of get lost. They get lost as people pass away.
Oh my gosh, I was getting emails from people who were saying, my mother is 93 and I don't feel like I know anywhere like as much about her as you
I
seem to know
know.
about your mom. And so, yeah, that's another thing. Maybe asking questions,
Hmm.
maybe asking our elders questions about their experiences while we still got them here.
It's so funny you say that. For Father's Day, I got my dad, who's the only like living relative on either side of the family right now. I got him a box, and there's a box where we ask questions, and we will say like, "What was your first girlfriend? What was your first car? What was your this?" And I'm going to give it to him for Father's Day so that we can. He's very lucid, so he can spark the conversation now because I don't want to wait, and I want to make sure that I can hear like what his answers are to some of these things. And I just got the box in the mail, and I saw it's one of those things that pops up on Instagram, and you're like, really, seriously? Oh, am I going to really get this? Yes, I am, because it
Oh my
sounds
God,
cool.
this is great. Can you send me the link after? Because I need this for my father-in-law.
I'll get you. I'll get you. I'll
My
get you
partner.
where I ordered the thing from. But it was really nice for you to be able to just sit there and say, like, what are these things that I don't really know about him? What was his favorite ice cream growing up? Where he still gets together. He's going to be 95 with a couple of guys that lived on the same block growing up in Newark, New Jersey. And they still get together for lunch. They go out and they have soup. They're really funny. And they go and the weather's got to be right. And they go to this one place, and the waitress there has got to have like a story to tell about these three guys that come in. And but it's those stories, those memories. And last year I did a small family reunion here at the house of people on my dad's side, and when they were leaving, my dad said to me, I may never see some of these people again. And it made me feel sad in some ways, but good that we'd done it. And then they were all sharing stories around the table, and it was how we all saw growing up differently and how it all was. And that those kinds of community of any single level are such a big deal, and we often overlook them, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I write a little bit about my crew. We call our friends from childhood. We call ourselves the Sensational Six because we're that
Yeah.
name. When we get together in person once a year, every year, and rent a house together for a few days, and the preciousness of people who hold those pieces of your history,
Mhm.
right, can remind you of who you were when you. I mean, it keeps you humble for one thing, but you know, but the preciousness of those bonds, especially as all of our lives get more scattered and we tend to live a lot of different places and have all these different chapters, holding on to those pieces, having people to say, did I ever tell you, who can tell who can tell stories on you, right? That's a
Yeah, they
very
can definitely tell stories. And they'll be having a book discussion, a book club discussion at the next get together. We'll be
yeah.
discussing, did I ever tell you? What would you put in about me if you ever wrote about me? There we go. There we go. What do you really want readers to take away from the book? Like if you just sum up in a couple of sentences, think authentically, what is it?
Hmm. Oh, it's say the things that you want to say to the people that you love right now. Don't wait.
Don't wait. Don't hold back. Don't hold back. So what's next for you? Theater, another book? Like, come on, we've got to get another book. If it's not a memoir, we got to do something. Either that.
I would love to write another book one day, but right now I'm writing a play, and I'm very, very excited to be back, to head back into a rehearsal room, and because I was talking about the great joy of getting to have this direct connection with your reader. There is a whole different, separate joy. Oh my God. There's a whole different separate joy in getting to be in a room with actors
Mhm.
and watch them interpret what you've made. It's its own wonderful, wonderful thing.
And it could be just a little bit different every night because they might look a little bit different way, or they might do something. Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's
or
like,
someone comes up with a great idea. Someone's like, "Oh, wait a minute, I have this. What if I do this and then this happened?" You're like, "Fantastic, try it, go." I mean,
make
collaboration
it
is
bigger, make it better, change that.
brilliant.
What, wait, if they said that line like that, that's not the line, but that works. So keep that.
So sorry.
Okay.
The one thing that never occurred to me was that the doorbell would go.
We can edit that part out. We can edit
My
that
God,
part.
can we? Because this is
Yes, we
just
can do this over. Don't worry about it. I'll ask the question again. Jordan, our producer, is great. I'll just tell her about where it comes in. No, she's great.
okay.
So what's next for you?
So I am writing a play, and I'm so excited to get back into a rehearsal room. I mentioned earlier the great joy of that very personal, direct connection with a reader. There is a whole different joy in connecting with actors and seeing your words interpreted through the lens of another artist who brings um, almost um, uh, an equal contribution to the final product. There's you, there's the director, there's the actors, and you're all dreaming into this world together. And so I'm very excited to head back into that space.
Yeah, and you're doing that at the same time, but they might do a different inflection. They might say a word a little bit differently, and you're like, keep that. That's what that works. That works. Stay there.
Absolutely. Or hopefully it is a little different every time because you're keeping it organic and fresh. But no, I love it when someone, at a rehearsal or after a show, they run up to you and be like, oh my God, I just had this crazy idea. What if I do this? And then she does that. And then and it's like, absolutely try it. I mean, there's such a sense of play and a celebration of impermanence. There's a wonderful permanence to books or at least a longevity to that object. But it also is a lot of pressure, right? It's like you want every word to be just so. And the freedom when something is impermanent and something is just for a night and only that group of people experiences it together. And that'll be different next time. That's joy and freedom of a different kind.
It's even like you go to a concert and you see a second night, or you see the third night, and it's not completely the same. There's something a little different.
Because the audience contributes as well to that energy. You, as an audience member, you are participating in a unique, bespoke event that will never happen again.
Now, have you acted in your own plays as well? Have you done that?
Oof, once. It was actually amazing, but it was terrifying. It was my last show in New York before the pandemic, and it was an adaptation of Anna Karenina. It was this like wacky, wild musical feminist adaptation. It was so much fun. And 2 weeks before we started rehearsal, our lead had to drop. And my director called me up. She said, Gwen, buckle up. I think it's you. And I was like, oh my God. Because it's like, I've written it, I'm acting in it. It's like, if you don't like this, you don't like me. It just felt so vulnerable. But I did it. And it's one of the most joyful theatrical experiences of my whole life. So you got to sometimes you got to go toward the fear.
Sometimes you got to go, okay, wait, it's me. Oh, I think I know the words. Let me see, but not to memorize. I'm terrible at memorization.
I am off book.
I'm like, wait a second, let me see. Can I tell it a little bit different here? And it's also, okay, when you were reading the audio book, when you were narrating, did you ever have a moment of, wait, can I change that word there? Or did you just say it was okay? Because
well, two things. One was that there were some runs of words that I was like, why in the world did you put those together? They're impossible to say. So the one I remember most was oversized t-shirt with a slit cut up the back. And then I had written it again a couple sentences later, oversized t-shirt with a slit cut up the back. I was like, this is quite a tongue twister. So that was one funny thing when you're like, wouldn't have done that if I knew I was reading it. And then the other thing was I did actually catch some mistakes that you don't find them until you are doing that. So another piece of writing advice is read your stuff out loud. It's the best way to hear, or you hear if you've used a word too much and it gets repeated. It's a really wonderful tool.
Yeah, it's also, audio didn't used to really matter as much, but now with audiobooks being so big, it's such a huge format, making sure the audio does work and reading aloud. I often say to authors, just read the book aloud and see if it works, because you're going to hear the same word over and over. And like, why did I say that? That's not what I would have wanted to say there. But you won't know it unless you read it aloud. Just reading it silently. You'll probably skip over words if you read silently. You're not going to read word for word.
Learn your own tics and your own. Yeah, it's really, really good tool.
Well, I look forward to hopefully another book, or actually you have to let me know if there's a play. I will definitely come into the city to see the play. But it was just, it's a book that I am thinking about people I would give it to, but more than that, it's a book that I savored, going to sit in a shelf on a really good, spot. It's one of my bets ons for the year. And with my bets ons, I'm saying, I'm betting you'll like this. And you may not like it at this particular phase, but if you're going to love this at some moment, like this book is going to work for you. And as soon as I finished it, I was like, oh, this is a bets on. And your team at the publisher was like really excited about this book. And I love that moment of complete abject enthusiasm of what can we do?
Yeah, I've been amazed and astonished at people have just thrown doors open for this project in a way that I have never experienced in my life as an artist. I've never seen people go out of their way so much to help make something, work and help a project make its way in the world. And I have to believe that tiny bit of that is my mom is somewhere, kind of just,
Pixie dust from your
yeah,
mom. Your mom's like,
exactly.
down on the page, you're stuck. I'm going to help you. I'm going to guide you. Put your fingers on the keys. I'll help you move them,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Gwen. It was such a pleasure to meet you. And like I said, the book really, really meant a lot.
Thank you so, so much. Thank you for your time. This was absolutely a delight.
And to our readers and viewers, we'll look forward to seeing you next time on Book Reporter Talks To.